share screen so I don't forget. Okay, so while we wait, I'd like for you to go onto this link and make sure that you download the ISO. It does take a few minutes, but when you get here, don't click this or this, click this. Okay, that's the first step, is to download the ISO and just drop it into your downloads folder. That's fine. This is an evaluation copy. You can get it from Microsoft, but you have to download an installer to get the ISO. The installer itself takes a long time to download. So we're getting it from ISO River, which is kind of like one of those websites that just release a bunch of ISOs or people share it. So we're not really violating anything with Microsoft because it's an evaluation copy. It's good for 90 days. And you know the deal, right? Like after that, if you want to buy the license, you have to contact them, but we'll talk about the license in a little bit. Okay, so just get that downloaded. It does take about 4 or 5 minutes, depending on the network traffic. Mine always take a little longer than you guys because I think I'm on a separate network. Okay, so, and then we are going to use VirtualBox. Some of you are familiar with this. We already did the Linux virtual machine in VirtualBox. But I want to show you a little bit more on Windows Server, how to install it on a virtual machine, because that's what you're going to see in the field, is to work with server machines and also to work with virtualization. Now, installing it at home, right? When you downloaded the ISO, you just need to use a software to convert it, so it unpacked the boot files and everything. And you can use any kind of CD burner type of software. Microsoft does give you the link on how to download those applications for conversion. It's pretty straightforward, right? And you want ISO for virtual machine because it's the easiest way for us to get all of boot and all of the files that we need compared to when you are installing on a regular physical system. All right, so I still have about 3 minutes going on mine, but let me open this. Okay, so since it's 35, we're just gonna go ahead and get started because I know you guys just want to get it done and go home and get some sleep, right? Okay, so I was really debating whether to use Windows 10 or server, and I thought you guys use Windows 10 regularly in the classroom. So I want to give you a little bit more understanding. And so when you take the next classes, it's going to be easier, especially when you have to use virtual machine. You can make your own and practice. So the things that you need for virtual machine, just like any virtual machine, is going to be ISO. You can do this lab if you have a Mac OS. VirtualBox is compatible with Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. All you need is going to be downloading the image file. That's what it's called, right? And another product that you can use is VMware Workstation Player, which is free. It's different than Workstation, which is a trial version. Hello. So we just need to first download the ISO. If you don't have VirtualBox on your home computer, you need to go and download it and choose the right version for your OS. That's really easy. Then let me see. It still have about 3 minutes, it says. Okay, so when we create the virtual machine, we just need to, and they already installed VirtualBox on here for you. So open up VirtualBox. Okay, so I wanted to, while we wait for the ISO to go, I did have it on my laptop. I just don't want to transfer the file. I want to do it like how you do it. You know, when you set this up, you can, when you first open this, okay, if you make a new virtual machine, obviously you would choose new, but if you have an existing virtual machine like the Linux one that we've used, then you just simply click add and then locate the virtual machine. By default, it's gonna put it into the C drive, but I want you to put it in a location where you can find it and copy it if you need to. It might not fit your USB, so when you get to that step where it says copy it to your USB, if it doesn't fit, because I don't know how many files you have on your USB or you have your USB today. If you don't, that's okay, right? In the future, if we do have to reuse it, if you have it, that will be great. If not, you can just make it real quick. I made like 3 virtual machines today in the morning, and it took me altogether less than an hour. So I used a Linux virtual machine for my Python programming class. I use a virtual machine for this class. I use a virtual machine for my 40A class. So overall, like it's quick, right? When you, okay, so let me see. Now on the new version of VirtualBox, if you install it instead of preferences, they're gonna call it settings. That's the new version. This is an old version that MVC installed, okay? So you can change your preferences here, and then you can also find the settings, which is the gear down the line. So let's do new. And then we are going to name our virtual machines. So we just want to call it CIS25 server 2019 VM. You want to put the name where you can know which one it is, because for me, I use all kinds of different virtual machines. Hi. Sometimes it's Linux, sometimes it's Windows, sometimes it's different version of Linux like Kali or Ubuntu. So we want to kind of know what that is, okay? And then on this section where it says machine folder, by default, you notice it's going to put it under the username, and then it's under the VirtualBox VM inside that folder. But we're going to click here and we're going to go other. And I want you to put desktop, and I want you to make a folder for it. It's always good to put all different type of virtual machine, even you use VMware. So make a folder, and then we're just going to name the folder the same thing, CIS25 server 2019 VM. And you are using the standard edition of the 2019, and it's the desktop edition. So keep in mind that when you download the ISO, the image is made for many different versions of the operating system. You will have to select the one that you want to use, but by default for server, if you don't select desktop, it's gonna make it all just command prompt. And that's normal for server, okay? Unless you really know your command line, then you would use that. So when you go into a business, a data center, that's what you're gonna see. The graphical user interface is great. It's good for training beginners, but you have to eventually learn how to use command prompt well. But for today, we are gonna use the desktop with the GUI version, okay? So once you make your folder to store your virtual machine, you're going to go ahead and select that folder. And we know exactly where it's located. And then on here, we want to click the drop-down menu, and we are going to find Server 2019 64-bit. VirtualBox is pretty intuitive in that even if you don't select the right one, it will know which one based on the files that it's writing. And that's okay. We want to make sure, right? So if you're using Linux, usually it's going to pick that up right away. But for Windows, we're going to have a lot of different versions. So where am I at in the step here? I had already made my folder, and then I selected my 2019 server version for VirtualBox to see, and then I'm going to click next. So I'm at step 8. Okay, so here is where we want to check. So if you just like the Ubuntu virtual machine, you want to give it about 2 gigs. Let's say that I have only 8 gigs on my computer. Giving it 2 gigs is okay because you still have 6 for your host system, which is your regular operating system that's using this application. But if you have more, you can give it a little bit more juice, especially if you're going to do a lot running the application within the virtual machine. So in my case, sometimes I do security analysis and I use a virtual machine because I can always delete it in case something happens. Then I can crank this up to about 4 gigs because I have a laptop that I use for my other work, which is 32 gigs of RAM. So 2 gigs is okay for us. Okay, so we want 2048 megabytes, which is approximately 2 gigabytes. Okay, and we're gonna go next. And by default, it's gonna give you 50 gigs. So for practice, 50 gigs is okay. That's the minimum that you should give for the hard drive, right? Think about the hard drive. But on a regular basis, if you do this for a regular server, you want to give it a little bit more storage, right? Because 50 gigs is going to be like really close to the minimum. And so when you started adding a lot of like tools and things to it, it's gonna be running out of space. So I normally, if I have a terabyte drive for the server, I would go with like at least 100 gig to 200 gigs to start, right? If you can go higher, like 500 gigs, just keep in mind that the installation process is going to be longer when you're giving it more storage space because it has to write dynamically across the disk. This is a virtual disk, so 50 gigs is going to run us like maybe 2/3 higher than your normal physical space. So when I copy this folder over to my USB, that will probably be like 1/3 of what you're seeing. So sometime close to like 16 gigs, 15 gigs, or even a fraction of that, like 1/10 of that, right? So we're gonna create, and then we are gonna keep the default for VirtualBox, okay? And then we're gonna go next, okay? So where am I at in this step here? What I did was I selected this, right, for the VDI for VirtualBox, that's step 11. And then I'm gonna choose dynamically writing for my disk. Okay, so we want to dynamically allocate it. You can do a fixed size and it tells you like what's the difference with that. So we can do dynamically. It's gonna write faster if you do that. Okay. All right, so here we're gonna pause here because it's gonna give you the file location. I had put it on my desktop, and if you want to make sure, you can click the little folder, and we want to check to make sure that it's in the right location where we would have it. Okay, so desktop, the CIS25 server 2019 VM folder. And then now in the case where if you wanted to crank this up, right, give it more storage, this is the time you would want to give it, let's say, 100 gigs, 200 gigs, etc. So for today, we're going to practice with using 50 gigs. Okay, so here, what you want to do is you want to set that up and then dynamically allocate it, check your file path, and then click create. Okay. So here it is. Now you can see settings. Earlier, it only gave you preferences. So here, what you want to do is before you start, right? Before you start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount another disk. So at the software level, the VirtualBox, it's not going to know that you have a secondary disk. Let's assume that this is a real computer and we installed a second hard drive to it. So virtually, we're going to do that. We are going to add a secondary storage. The reason why is that I want to show you how you can do that. You can add as many, but then when we start talking about the type of partitions and volume that we're going to create, it's going to be limited in Microsoft if you choose MBR compared to GPT. Okay, that's what the chapter is about, actually, OS and drives. Okay, so here what we're going to do is before we start it, we're going to go into settings. And this is, think of this as your setup or your BIOS or your UEFI for your virtual machine. This is where you can configure that computer, that virtual computer. Okay, then so in here, after we click the orange here, the settings, we are going to go to the fourth option where it shows you storage. And I purposely put this here because sometimes it's missed, it's so small, right? We're gonna click to add a hard disk, and you can use the controller SATA. So storage, we're gonna select the fourth option, and then we're gonna click this, okay? Now, let's say that if you really want to simulate a real computer, right? Like you have other ports outside of serial ATA. And right now in the regular physical system, we probably use SATA 3, right? Which is to transfer as 6 gigabit per second. So the bottom piece, and you will know how to do that now, the bottom piece right here, these little icons allows you to add the actual controller. What does that mean? Those are different ports. So in the case, if you want USB, this is where you add it. If you want, you know, IDE, the old flat ribbon one, this is where you add it, the bottom, okay? But we're gonna click the top, okay? And then what I showed here is that once you click the add hard disk, okay, and then you are going to choose. So we're going to click add again. Oh, I'm sorry. Click create. I apologize. Click create, and then we're going to tell it that this is for VirtualBox. So it's a VDI. Click next. And just like what we just did just now, this is a separate disk now, right? We're gonna go next, and then we're just gonna create. Okay. Okay, so the file path should be in the same area unless it's different, then you can copy it over. But for here, it tells you what's the actual size of that. That's going to be very minimal. So like the regular size for your system is only like 2 megs, which is not very big, right? But the overall folder, after it writes the VDI file, you're going to see that it's going to be a little larger. So after we do that, what did I do here? Hold on one second. Let me redo that again. Click and because sometimes when I write the step, I skip it. So click here, click create. Okay, so we did that, and then we're gonna select it. Okay, and then so click the one that you just created, and then we're gonna go ahead and click choose. So what you're doing is you have one disk that's gonna be for your OS, okay? And then you have a secondary disk that's going to be for your data, right? Like we physically would add. Yes, question? VDI or VHD? VDI. Yeah, for VirtualBox, we're only going to use VDI. So once you have your disk set up, right? And if you're happy with it, you're going to click OK. But I want to briefly show you something. Okay, so most of our modern computer, the computer that you have mostly are going to use multi-core processor. And how you can change and let VirtualBox use those extra cores, okay? Because if you don't, it's just a single processor. It treats it like a single processor. You can click system and go to processor, and this is where you change it. So if on my computer, if I have 16 CPU, 16 core, which is 8 physical processor, right? Those are 8 physical processor with 16 core. Then I can up this, right, and make my virtual machine faster. Why is that important? Well, what if you're testing application using the virtual machine? What if you're running a security analysis where you need more processor juice? This is where you're gonna go and set it up, right? Okay, so I just want to show you that, but we're gonna go ahead and click OK. So now we should see your storage, and we do have an optical drive which is empty. Now we can start. Okay, so it's gonna take a little bit to go, and what this is like we have the installation disk ready, right? We are gonna go ahead and we set up the storage for in our BIOS, and now we're gonna boot, and we are gonna install. Okay, and the first thing that it's gonna ask you is where that image file is gonna come from. So that's going to be from your download. right? Mine's completed and it's in the download folder, your ISO. So in a regular physical server, we would then need to unpack this ISO using a software like I mentioned, but in a virtual machine, we're going to use it as an ISO as it is, right? ISO is just a file format that we use for images that represents operating systems, and so that way the user can interface with it, okay? All right. Oh, what happened?
Yeah, what did we forget? Yeah, we forgot something.
Let's close that. Let's go back to settings. Go back to storage and then go to your let me check the process again, because when I wrote that, I was like having 5 things going on. Hold on 1 second. Storage, click here. Click here. Okay. So it's already maxed out on the controller. Click OK. Okay. So go back to settings. If it's giving you the fatal error, make sure that you mount the server 2019. Click OK, and then click start. Because it was trying to mount the other one probably, or it's not able to see it. I love VirtualBox in the case that like you can still. Why is it saying that? Are you getting the same error as I do?
Yeah.
You know why? Because we modify something while we're in it. Okay, let's close it. Oh. Let's redo that again. Yes, let's redo it. It takes a few minutes. Okay, and then you can delete the file. So let's see, CIS25 server 2019 VM. And then we are going to mount it to or locate it on our desktop. And then click select folder. We're going to go to server 2019 64-bit. Click next. Oh, let's make another folder then. Say new. We can just call 2019 VM. That's good. Yeah, it doesn't like rewriting over the other ones. That's just the way that they design the software applications. So everything's the same with the memory. Create, next, dynamically allocated, next, and then we have that in the folder. Go create, and then go ahead and click start. See, it only takes like 1 or 2 minutes. Oh, I'm getting the same error. Hold on. Let's power it up.
Getting one that says they select a virtual optical disk file or a physical
Oh,
optical.
I got it.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where you should be.
There you go. Took a while, but I got it.
This is boo-boo for me. Hold on 1 second.
So,
Yeah, so when you get there, if you guys get to the when it boots and it asks you for the boot file, the image file, locate it from your downloads folder. That's where you should be. Okay. I think it didn't like my, let's see if it does
what
this.
did I do? Yeah. Okay, okay, fine. Yeah. doing this all wrong. Yeah, shit. I like to. Third one. Maybe. Yeah. Yes, it is. I saw it had a big. Yeah, that's. But what's it called? Yeah. Yeah. Well, of course, that giving where the it now based on the value because you would kill yourself.
Okay.
That makes sense.
All right, so we should be here, right?
Just figure out-
Are we okay? If you're getting an error, close the application and then go back and make sure that you select the right storage and then do that again.
All right, we'll start.
How are we doing? Okay. All right. Here is where we're going to select our image,
And then
click add,
click it.
and then go downloads, and then click the ISO,
Yeah.
click
There you go.
open,
There you go. That's how you do it.
and then choose.
Start.
Okay. And then start.
Accept terms and conditions.
And it's gonna load, like it's gonna take a minute to load the files. So at this point, right, it's gonna boot. So you give the image files using it boot, like how you stick the USB, and then you boot from it, and it's gonna bring you here. So this is where we're gonna select the regional information. We're gonna go next, okay, and we're gonna install now. So what we want to do is we are going to select, this is important. We are going to make sure that we select the desktop experience, because if you don't, you're going to get an only command prompt. So now the difference between the standard and the data center is that the data center is used for enterprise level, like a very large company. It's where an enterprise would have data center, something like for Amazon or something like a big company. Can RCCD use data center? Sure. Yeah. You know, so the scale of this compared to the standard is bigger. And you do have additional feature with the standard. Now, Microsoft charge per user is considered per cloud seats, meaning that if you have 1,000 user, one server, they're gonna charge you 1,000 user license, right? And so it's a little bit different than what you see with Windows 10 Professional or Ultimate, right? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna select this, you're gonna go next. And then accept, and then go next. But here, normally most people just do the upgrade, install, and keep files, but I wanna show you how to manage your partitions. Click custom. So this is what you see with the unallocated space, okay? And then what you're gonna do is you are going to select this and you are gonna make a new partition. Remember how last week we talked about partitions are like section in the drive, just like room in the house. So we are gonna make new. And then I want you to type in 4,500. So we're gonna cut this drive into different parts. Click advance. Yep, and then new. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give it like about 4.5 gigs just for data, and then the rest we're gonna use it for OS. So once you click apply, it's gonna make the first partition. Now the rest of the drive is unallocated. Unallocated is different than free space in that unallocated is not, it doesn't have any kind of file system, or it's not allocated toward anything yet, right? It's an empty drive, like a brand new drive that we have. So the rest of this, what we want to do is we want to make it for our OS. Now it's automatically going to take about a small fraction of it, like some megabytes for your system you know, that's, and then some of it's going to be reserved to be able to identify where the boot file is going to be. So you're going to click the second, which is the drive 0 unallocated space, and you're going to go new. And we're going to keep the default number here. The rest of our drive is going to dedicate to the OS. So we're going to click apply. And it's going to say, hey, you know, it's going to write over that, and that's going to wipe out all your data. Just to make sure, we're going to click OK. Okay. So this is going to take about less than a minute to set up. And this is what you see. So what we did was we cut this up into 2 different sections. One is going to be very large for our OS, and then a small section that's going to be for our data, right? Okay, and you notice that it has like a small, right, system reserve section. That's default. It's always going to be like that. On your computer, it's like that too with Windows 10. So now we partition the drive. That's different than formatting the drive. So when you cut up the drive, it doesn't have any file system yet, right? So we are going to go ahead and first click the first one that we created, which is about close to 4.5, and then we're going to format it. So all the new modern Windows operating system, it's recommended that you use NTFS, New Technology File System. It's been around for a long time. It's nothing new, right? But that's the name. Because it has security encryption feature compared to FAT or EXT-FAT. But EXFAT, like I mentioned last week, it works for all other OSs. All the other OS can see it. So we're going to go ahead and click format, and then we're going to click OK. So now that drive is ready to go, and then we are going to click the third drive, which is the 45 gigs, and we're going to click format and the same thing. Okay, so that's how you format. Now, in other OS installation, you can choose, right? Like Windows 7, you can choose FAT32 or FAT64 or NTFS. My recommendation is to use NTFS, but the downside of that is only Windows C Windows with NTFS. So your disk has to be formatted with NTFS to store NTFS, because it's like different file system. It's not going to be able to see. So go next.
Actually, I think Linux can also see it.
Yeah, it sees it Windows, but it doesn't read it sees it as a Windows OS, but it doesn't read the file system. Yeah, because Linux uses ext. Okay, so we are gonna go ahead and format it. This takes about, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. So kick back, relax, and then catch up on this, right? So we did this, we custom advanced. So whenever that you want to partition, you want to do the advanced option. Okay, we created the partition with 4.5 gigs. We formatted it. We also formatted the rest of the space for our OS. Okay, so if you have a terabyte, like you can take, like, let's say 500 gigs of it for your data and then 500 gigs of it for your OS. Why will we do that? Right? In the case that if you do have corruption in the OS, you're still going to have the other section of the drive that stores data intact. It's just a good practice overall, right? But if the physical drive overall failed, both of them are done. Okay. So logically, you can section your drive that way. Any question? Okay, so just sit tight for a few minutes and wait. That's how it is. Get some snacks. Okay, after this, it's going to ask you to put in a password. I know I'm not practicing password security here, right? Because I'm using all caps, so it's easy for you. But for the server system, it's good to use complex password, because later on you would need to apply the policy once everything goes. Yeah.
That far down there?
start going. Oh. Oh. I think it just, yeah, it just did that. That's for my settings, my password. Wait, how did you get that?
I don't know. Want to have both of them?
Yeah, I did. So this. So I don't have to buy into their fashion. So it will be more. I know. I know. But I have to use Google because Google's the biggest thing. I'm gonna use Outlook, but I'm so old for it.
Okay, how are we doing?
Oh.
Still going? Okay, so here we are, right? Put in a password. So I have you type CIS25 lab 9 exclamation point.
Can't get it. Can't-
Okay, and then we click finish. It's gonna finalize. Now here in a regular system, we will hit Control Alt Delete, but on the virtual machine, it's not gonna distinguish between your host, which is your outside your Windows 10, and the virtual machine itself. And it's been giving you this message, right? It's able to capture your mouse and keyboard. So we're gonna do input, keyboard, Control Alt Delete. Okay, that's like issuing Control Alt Delete for the virtual machine. Then we type in our password that we created.
I think I might have created two by accident.
Okay, so here's our desktop and you can close this. And then usually new Windows OS, it's gonna do this. It's gonna say, hey, are you connecting me to any kind of network, right? We'll figure that out because usually on the server, you connect it to other systems, but it's not gonna dynamically obtaining the IP from anyone yet, right? It's gonna use a static IP because it's a server. So that will be another class. So you can just close that or click out of it. So on the server OS, this is what you always gonna see, okay? And whenever it shows you red, that means that it needs attention. So you're always gonna see the server manager dashboard because this is where we use all the tools and all the things that we need, the features we needed here,
Oh, I hate
okay? So I want you to click on File and Storage. Okay. And then, so where am I at right here? I logged in, right? And then, oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you. you need to make a folder on your desktop because we're gonna link that folder to a drive. So open up your File Explorer, go to desktop, right click, make a new folder, and then you just call it data. And then close File Explorer. Okay, so after that, you can click on File and Storage. Okay, so unlike your regular Windows 10, it's gonna give you that because the way that the server works is we can put in many drives for our data and different type of services. So if you click on volume, okay, it's gonna list all the drives that we created. We partitioned, remember, and we formatted. Okay, so here it tells me C is where our operating system lives, and D is what we formatted, the little small section of the drive for our data. Okay, so where am I at right here? I'm at volume. So we need to answer the question, how many volumes are listed? You should see 3. You should see 2 actual volume, and then there's a system reserve volume, and that's automatically created. Yes, question?
So it was input, keyboard, and then what?
You're gonna go input, keyboard, and then Control Alt Delete. Okay. All right, so how many volumes? We should see 3. What's the free space on the drive C? If you click drive C, right, it should tell you the free space, 35.8 gigabyte. So let me highlight it in red here. And then we would have 38.5 GB. Okay. Then we are going to go back to our volume, and then we're going to right click C, and we're going to go to properties. This is how you can check out your volume, right? And it should give you the same information, like what's the U space, what's the free space, and the file system that you choose to format earlier, it's defaulted to NTFS, and it says it's healthy. So it asks you here, what's the file system? New technology file system, your NTFS. Okay. All right, then once we check out the file system, we can click OK. All right, any question? Okay, so you can always use the instruction here and follow that. So we're at step 48. Now we are going to return to the volume console. We're going to click on the D drive, the small drive that we created. And then we're going to right click it, and we're going to choose manage the drive letter path. What I'm showing you here is that you can change the drive letter and you can link that drive to a folder. Why do I do that? Because sometimes you will have network drives or drives on your server system, but then you can mount it to a specific folder. So people just throw files in there and it's automatically linking that to your drive. Okay. In the past, the procedure is a little different, but Microsoft has streamlined this and it's much easier now. So you are going to right click D, and you are going to choose manage drive letter and access path. And you can do this in disk management or file storage for the server. Okay. So the drive letter, what if I don't like D? So most of the network administrator, they like using like the later letters for like network drives, because you might add in a bunch of different hard drives and optical disks and so on. So by practice, we normally like the ending ones, like Z, Y, X, you know, and they are very obvious to us that that's something that's a little different than your regular C, D, and E locally. Okay, so we're gonna choose Z, and you can choose any letter you want actually, but I just want to show you, you can change your drive letter. And then after that, we are gonna click browse. Okay. We're gonna go to C drive, users, administrator, that's our username, right? And then desktop and data. And then select. So what you're doing there is that the path to access that drive is through that folder called data to this user account. Okay, you're not done. You're going to click add and then you click OK. And that's how you link your folder to an access path. Okay. All right. So then we did this part, right? So we're mounting the data folder to the volume Z, aka D for the administrator user. And then we finish that. So take a screenshot when you're here. You now have a Z. Okay. Now almost done. This is really quick tonight, right? So we are gonna also now right click the Z drive, look at the property, look at its file system and the free space. So now we changed the drive letter. It shouldn't be different than your D drive, right? So we can click the property and then we should see that it is NTFS and the free space is 4.37 gigabyte. So we can say NTFS. Make sure we know the difference in the file system for A+ and Microsoft certification. Was that 4.37 GB? Yeah. Okay, so we're good there. Then we're gonna click OK to close the property sheet, and then we're gonna use server tools. Now, unlike your regular client or desktop OS, server tools are located at the top here, right? So when you add more roles to the server, it's going to be located here. But right now we see it as a regular computer, a local system that has an operating system and drives. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to, okay, click on tools and then choose disk cleanup. And then we are going to select Z and click OK. It doesn't take very long to do it. So disk cleanup. And then we're going to go Z drive and then click OK. Okay. Since we don't really have anything on it, it's not really going to change very much. But once in a while, you want to do this as people add files to it. And so it's going to clean up the recycle bin. And it's going to clear up the DirectX shader cache, which is temp file. And then we're just going to delete file. And this is going to take like less than a minute or a second. Okay. So we did this. Then you're going to click on tools and you're going to use defragmentation and optimize drive. This is the way that we can make the files more contiguous. So the way that OS open your file, so let's say you open up your Microsoft Word for your homework assignment or for this lab right now, what it does is it goes, right? It has a way to map. So it has the information for that file as an address. So it's going to go and it's going to pull, right, different portion of your file and combine that together to give you the file itself. It's not in a contiguous manner if you don't use solid state, if you're using like HDD. So defragmentation and optimized drive is really designed for your hard disk drive. Compared to what you've seen, we tested this with the other lab for your solid state. It doesn't really change very much. As flash technology, right, it's kind of like, think of it like ice cube tray, right? It puts the file into those slots already. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to tools, defragmentation and optimize drive. Okay. And it tells you to use C. First, we're going to analyze it. And it says that it's 3% fragmented. We didn't really have anything in it, but as you write the file system to it, it is going to be fragmented because VirtualBox see this drive as an HDD, okay? So we're going to answer the question, right? What is the percentage? That is 3% on mine. And then we are going to click optimize. And then it's going to take a few minutes. Okay, so it's going to do multiple passes to consolidate. So what it does is it's going to take the files that was scattered everywhere and put them closer together, right? The pieces of your file. And so that way, when when that file is used, it can quickly pull that up when they are all together. Okay, so that was done. Take a screenshot here. So now it should show 0 fragmented. Now, can you do this? So in some system, right, there are certain files that are fixed. Virus does this. When it writes to the disk, sometimes, you know, when your system quarantine it's there, it's fixed, right? You cannot delete it because it's related to your system file. Or in some case, some system files, it cannot be moved, right? Relocated into more of a contiguous area. So what will happen is you might have, in some case, some drive that's going to be like 1% fragmented. And that's okay. We can live with that. But when you see a very high percentage fragmented, that drive becomes very slow. And when you access the file, it's going to be slow, right? So in the case where people tell you like, oh, you know, I just replaced my hard drive and then I downloaded something and then now it's just like, I don't know, I can't even open the file. Like, so you just need to go and start looking at the problem, right? If it's a new drive, it shouldn't have that problem. So there might be something that's impacting it. And so you have to walk back, like, what did you download? You know, did you scan your virus? Okay, so we're good with this. Any question? Okay, take a screenshot. And then we're going to close the optimization window. We're going to go into computer management. Okay. Now, there are several ways to get to this particular thing. You can go through tools. You can right click Windows, right? But I want to show you how server does it. Everything is in tools. Okay. Then your computer management is here. Computer management console. This is used for the local system. On the server system, we rarely touch this unless it's related to that physical computer. Okay. Everything that we use, like user accounts and everything like that, it's in a separate role, like Active Directory and IP address control. We would use the HCP. So the local user that exists right now is your admin, right? That came with the installation. And then when we make the system a domain controller, we elevate it to a different role, okay? Then we no longer need this. We're going to be elevating those type of users, and that's for another lab, okay? So here, what you're going to do is you are going to go to your disk management down here. And this is just another interface where you can see your disk, your logical disk, okay? So I have a disk 0. Remember, it has 3 sections, like 3 rooms. Okay, and I do have what VirtualBox sees as an optical drive. So now if you click on C, you should see that it has a boot. So that means it's an OS. It stores page file, it does crash dump, and you can scroll right. So how many primary partition do I have? I have 4. So for Microsoft OS, when you use a master boot record for your partitions, you're limited to 4 primary or 3 primary and 1 extended. Okay, so that means what happens when I add another drive to this, it's gonna be extended after that, right? It's never gonna be primary again because the other 4 already took primary role. Now, so Microsoft, so this was designed for like the 80s and the 90s, right? Where hard drive was not regularly sold. So now they have to adapt the OS to make sure that it's compatible with the old stuff and good with the new stuff. So Microsoft implemented what's called the GPT. And with GPT, you can have up to 190 something drives, right? And there's no, it doesn't see it as like a limitation with 4 primary, because back in the day, most people, they will have like 4 drives in their system and that's it. But nowadays, people have lots and lots of drive on the server, on computers and so on. So because we have the technology to accommodate it. So when you read the chapter this week or look at the notes, you're gonna see that it's gonna talk about, you know, MBR for master boot record, which is the old legacy and it's still being supported by Microsoft. And then it's gonna talk about GPT and all the new OSs, it supports both because we want to go back and we want to go forward at the same time with the OS. Okay, so here, what it's telling you to look at is that when you look at your disk management view, what's the status for C? When you look at that, what's the status for C? It's healthy, right? We saw that earlier as well. So we can say it's healthy. And then if you want to go further, you can include all of this. So that's how we were able to distinguish between the OS and the regular, just the regular section of your drive. Okay, volume. Okay, how many partitions are primary? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So 4. So anything that gets added after this, it's gonna treat it as extended. That means that it's just an extension of these 4. Okay, and it won't see it as like an individual drive. Okay, so which partition is marked active? Okay, so which one is marked active? My system reserve, right? Right here. Okay, then we're gonna close the virtual. So that's it, right? I just wanted to kind of show you how to use it. Now, let's say, okay, for the sake of the exercise, let's say that I wanted to get rid of this. Like I'm not happy with it. I want to delete it. You can simply right click and choose delete volume. In this one, and unlike your storage, unlike the other console, you can manage a lot more through the local disk management. You can shrink it. What if I wanted to make it smaller, right? Or if there's extra space, if there's unpartitioned or unallocated space, you can actually expand it. So in the case where if there's space and it's not used for any drive, you can make it larger by leaning into that space. So what that will do is on the logical, this is not reorganizing anything. It's just mapping everything that's going to be extended to that particular drive, you see? Okay. And that's how it logically see it. The computer doesn't really move stuff around. The disk is spinning and it does write to the sector, but a lot of it is just referencing based on the addresses of that sector. Okay. So that's how you can change it. And then you can also change just like what we've done before. And then you can also mark a certain partition active or not. Okay. All right. But before you do make any kind of changes to the size of the drive, just make sure that you back up your data because you never know, right? Software, when it stops or when it fails somewhere, right, you lose all your data. So before you extend any partition, right, or you know, shrink, we want to make sure that we back up data to another system. Okay. So I hope that I can give you a little bit better understanding on how to look at your logical disk, and then also introduce you to the server 2019, which is much better than the other versions. 2016 is very close to it, right? They had improved quite a bit in you know, the process and the procedures on how it's used. So look, your folder is now no longer a folder, you see? it is a drive now. So how cool is that? So now you know what to do to link the folder to the drive. And then you just tell the people who are not computer friendly, right? Just to click that shortcut on the desktop and then put your files in there. But so basically it's a folder that's connected to a drive, right? I do that a lot, especially for like the other department that they're not comfortable with, you know, knowing where to put their files for archive and stuff like that. And so we would map the network drive and then we'll link it to a folder and we'll be able to do that. So most support technician, that's your job. And then you set up roaming profiles. So in the case they go to different branches, they're able to see the same desktop as they sit at their own desk, because that's important for people. Any changes to the system is scary for people, right? So you have to be compassionate about that. And you have to make it easier for them. And understanding the process on streamlining the process for them. Okay. All right. So anytime that you shut down server, because servers don't go down, you have to give it a reason, and it creates a log. So you're going to go shut down and then you tell it why. Right. Let's say we just go with like unplanned something, but in the reality, we only reboot and shut down when we have problems. Okay. Like installing more RAM, adding more drives, right? Updating, stuff like that. But before you shut down the server, you got to bring another server up, your failover server. And so otherwise people are going to complain like, oh, I can't access my email or log into the network because, you know, something happens. Okay. All right. Because this server is super important. Like 80 to 90% of business use Microsoft servers. So, you know, you now know how to install, you can practice. And if you take my CIS40A, right, you will be learning different server roles along with network connection to the server and so on. So, all right, if we're done, right, you can copy it over to your USB if you have it. If you don't, that's okay, because you know how to make your server machines and you can do it real quick, right, in a few minutes. Post all your application, remove your USB, submit your lab. And I apologize for the confusion with lab 7. I saw in the stuff that some of you didn't see how to upload, right? Because I had previously linked it to practice lab. And so you had submitted lab 7 to assignment 7 and then assignment 7 to lab 7. So I put a note in there. I'm not going to penalize you for submitting it late. If you do have the file, just please re-upload it. And because the way Canvas allows me to grade is when you upload and click submit, it sends me a link. And then I can go into the gradebook via that link. And then I can access the gradebook, but it ties that to your profile. So please resubmit. And then if you have any questions, let me know. Okay. All right. Make sure we read the chapter 6, part 1. Okay, and then I will get the videos up, I promise. It's just, sorry for the delay. I have been not very good at getting stuff in earlier, but so if you submit assignment 1 day late, I'll take it, I'll give you full credit, okay? But with other professors, right, don't say, oh, Dr. Nguyen said, you know, she gives me 100% for 1 day late. They don't work that way, okay? So, but employers don't work that way either. But I'm okay with you if you turn it in a day late. I'm not gonna have a cow because things happen. Okay. All right. Close your stuff and then submit and have a good night. Grab a snack. I did find some hot Cheetos and chips, so just enjoy. Please stop recording before I forget. You're welcome.